Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns. This is an interview day, and the city of Chicago kind of gloomy again. It's kind of a pattern for when we are getting together, Steve. So maybe this is going back to what you talked about.
Which part? I can't
that
remember.
You love the gloom.
I do love the gloom. The gloom, I don't know, there's something about it that just makes me get super, super excited, and I don't know why it works opposite energies, but, you know, yin and yang.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to introduce our unicorn for today, right?
Oh, man, folks, I am super, super excited about this. We have Cameron Schnieder. I got to get all the Schneider.
It's a lot of consonants in a very short amount of time.
I'm just used to calling you Cam, and that's okay, isn't it?
There you
All right.
Absolutely. Been called worse.
Oh my gosh, so many fights, and so anyway, but Cam is long lost friend really, and we've spent plenty of time around a bonfire pontificating and philosophizing. We've spent plenty of hour running through rehearsals together as we have made the musics. All of the notes in the Western scale have been slaughtered by me and given the percussion of Cam. And so anyway, Cam hails out of the 515, and so it's good to have him on. One of our inception ideas that we were talking about with Cam was that he would become a frequent guest in regards to he is of the age bracket and of the music side of things where he just keeps an ear on new stuff, and so we were hoping to be able to get him on. He was hoping to be able to get out to Chicago, and we're all giving the Rupke peace sign to COVID-19 is what we're doing right now. And for those of you who don't know it, I remember my commitment last week to trying to keep it kid friendly. I'm not going into what that is based on this time, but maybe after we get further in, maybe that'll be the case.
Maybe.
So.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Cam, as we were in a very brief text, which I'm sure you can appreciate the brevity of the text last night. As we were, taking a look at that, why don't you just introduce yourself? I mean, I know you got the Cobble hype going and stuff like that, but why don't you just introduce yourself, give people a background, let people know some things that you want them to know, and then think about a few things that they don't, like people who know you wouldn't even know, and just kind of toss that in the salad and see what comes up.
I guess as starting off, introducing myself, like Steve said, in relation to Steve, we've been friends for a few years now. There's ties that go beyond our relationship, even as far as history and such, and with Steve knowing my dad, and but I am from the 515. I'm a musician. I work with some really enjoy cooking. Last night, I celebrated leaving one job to go into another job by cooking up a nice steak dinner. That was pretty exciting. But, I don't know. That's my biggest stuff. Red meat. Yeah, it'd been a long time since I'd had a steak, and that feels like a celebratory dinner. I don't know why. I was like, I feel like I earned this.
So you had a red meat dinner, and in celebratory. Did you match that with some red wine, or were you drinking H2O last night?
No, I didn't have red wine. I did have wine. I forget what it was. It was a rosé of sorts. I'm not a big wine like aficionado. I don't know all the grapes and the regions and even the different kinds. I just know it by color, and I know I don't like it very dry, so red is not usually my thing, but I'm not a huge wine drinker.
Yeah.
It was just there.
Yeah.
And it seemed like that's what you do, right?
Well,
you have a steak dinner.
It was celebratory. Yeah, it was celebratory.
Yeah.
All right, note to self. There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you said job change, and I'm just guessing, but I don't know. I don't know. I really we in the last 9 months. I think that you quit a job where you were selling bike parts, and then I think that you got into a job doing storm damage assessment for an insurance company, or like some business that did that kind of thing. And is that the job you're leaving?
No, so I've been doing aftermarket dirt bike and motorcycle builds for a few years now. And I was considering leaving that to go and do some roofing work as like a project manager for a roofing company. But that didn't really quite pan out. It wasn't the right season for it.
Okay.
Being that I started looking into it in November, which is November to March is kind of not exactly roofing season in Iowa.
It's true.
But so no, I'm leaving I'm still employed at the dirt bike job through tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow is actually my last official day, but I have vacation today and tomorrow. I'm just packing up my things, finishing up projects and such, but yeah.
Nice. And can you talk about where you're going, or?
Yeah, sure. I'm working for Tri-City Electric, which is just the electricians company. They work a lot with the union. So I'll be joining in there and then considering an apprenticeship in the electricians union.
Wow.
So that's kind of a more a buddy, a mutual friend, two mutual friends of ours, Ben Reed.
Yep.
He's in the apprenticeship now. Has been for about a year, and then Jordan is also doing that.
Nice.
Through a different company, but yeah, so it sounds pretty neat. I don't know. I think the idea more and more, especially through the last year of like working at home during COVID and being on the computer and the phone a lot, the idea of learning a trade and having a skill set that is, always needed, like being an essential worker, that really struck home for me. And the idea that I'd want to be able to create something with my work rather than, sit and stare at a screen all day.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So
I can't do that.
Well, and the other thing is infrastructure. It seems like if I have any sense of what's going on in our current culture, infrastructure is going to be a major, major investment by the U.S. government. And the amount of money that they're throwing down for infrastructure builds is really beyond comprehension. If you
I think
were
it's
born
like
in
$6 trillion or something right now.
Yeah. And so with that, the trades would be definitely a place where, as far as consistency with a job, and quite frankly, I would love the idea of you knowing how to hook up my kiln in the studio.
Yes, you're not blowing anything up.
Oh man, yeah, you'll have to catch our last episode, and we talk about the dumpster fire that happened in the studio last week. Oh man.
The Great Chicago 21.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Is that one? Yeah, the next Great Fire in Chicago.
Yeah.
Is that episode online already? I feel like I've listened to. I think I've listened to everything that's online.
Well, it's on YouTube.
Maybe I haven't.
Yeah,
That one just launched on Sunday.
Here's the thing that we did that is really messing with everybody, and that is we changed our Trailer Tuesday to Trailer Thursday, which really doesn't work for our schedule, and so it might become Trailer Friday. And then when we did the live event, we did it on Sunday night at 7 p.m. and there was really good interaction, and it made sense that everybody's kind of wound down, and if they wanted to be able to, like, oh, I'm tired of Netflix, maybe I'll just watch Cut Daisies and Unicorns, maybe that could make sense. But it's just getting, anytime you're in something new and then you create change, it's like change of the flow and stuff. But we're committed to it for season 2, and yeah, looking for that. So because of everything going on in people's schedules, we got into there's 2 Phil and Steve episodes, and so that's why I actually, on YouTube or on the podcast stuff, audio, you can be able to pick us up on season 2, episode 1, season 2, episode 2. You are season 2, episode 3, which is one of my favorite numbers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And people will be listening today on Mother's Day. So that's
sweet.
Right. So
yeah.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Right.
I'm on TV.
Shout out.
You know what? When you're over there for lunch, oh no, that won't work out because we launch at like 7 p.m. I was going to say you could be able to pull up and be like, Mom, I made it in the big time. There are 9 people listening to this right now.
You know, that might actually work. Our family, we are an evening family. Like if we have a lot of, like in April, there's 3 birthdays in my family. We do dinner every time because it's like, I'm not getting up early and cooking, so we're not doing breakfast or brunch. And then lunch, it's like, that interferes with Sunday lounging. So let's get together at like 6. You know,
yeah,
we're procrastinators, and then we do it. Then we'll be up really late.
Yeah.
It's kind of the vibe. I think this week though, I've had this itch to go mini golfing, so I'm trying to get the whole family to go mini golfing for Mother's Day. And it's one of those things where I don't know if Mom is interested in that at all, but it sounds awesome. Which is about the most iconic like mother's situation ever. It's like, I don't know if Mom really likes it, but this sounds great.
And
a lot of that.
And by the way, my gift to you is a frying pan.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, it's kind of cool because your mom, actually, point of origins, your mom is an incredibly great piano player, I understand, and has a beautiful voice. And so tell the audience the story you were telling me about musical influences from your family of origin. Yeah.
Well, growing up, we were homeschooled. And so being at home, there's 4 kids. I'm the middle child, which that might poke through in my personality at times during this podcast.
And how are you the middle child of 4?
Well, because if there was to be another child, that's how I always looked at it. I was like, if Mom and Dad ever had another kid, then I'd be the middle.
Yeah.
I suppose you could say if they had one less kid, then Jake could be the middle, but I don't like that line of thinking as much as adding one because I like my little sister quite a bit. But I doing that whole thing, being homeschooled, there was always music in the house, like listening to music. Mom was a piano player. Justin was a piano player, my oldest brother. My brother Jake played saxophone. My little sister played piano and violin, and then everybody sang in choir or show choir or whatever. Justin also played guitar, and he can play bass and drums. He doesn't do that a whole lot, but he can. And then my mom played piano and sang in church and stuff. So, and then Dad is the band manager,
yeah,
and chief roadie.
Yeah.
So growing up, that was always a thing. It's like, I'm sitting on the couch doing homework and Mom's playing piano, or we're listening to music. And during the day, it was always classical music that was played like throughout the house. So there was a lot of that. And then on the weekends, we could listen to like rock and roll. Like we'd be cleaning out the garage with Dad. So on Saturday, we'd have 100.3 The Bus on, and we'd be listening to Boston and AC/DC and Bon Jovi. And then you flip the page, and then Sunday we're in church singing hymns with piano and organ. So it was kind of that whole thing growing up. And then I joined band in the 5th grade. Wanted to be a trumpet player, ended up playing drums. Wasn't my plan, but that's kind of how it happened, and kind of just stuck with it.
Yeah, that's the like kind of the flip through that I always remembered Well, I'm glad it's the internet that's unstable and not myself today.
Because you never know.
Well, actually, it's been a great week. I feel balanced this week for whatever reason. I think part of it has to do with the completion of the big project in the studio of Earth and Warehouse, and got the floor all done and things like that. And so,
Floor looks good too.
yeah. But I love the first time you ever told me that story, Cam. I just loved I don't know, just the picture, and maybe probably because I know your mom and your dad, that the idea of during your formative years that was happening. I just thought it was fantastic of, that there was space within your family that, yeah, mom is putting this in front of us. Another fact that if when we learned on our live event that there's a generation of young parents out there who are, saying, hey, you guys have been down the road. I'm like, are you calling me old or grumpy? Or is it just both?
Both.
This is a little bit of both, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Absolutely. I need to go back and watch Grumpy Old Men just to take a look in the mirror. But, and they're like, hey, give us some pointers, give us some tips, and stuff like that. And I really loved the picture of your mom and dad, and I can visualize them, but that there was a bandwidth or there was an openness within your home that there was room for it all. Now, this is where I go into, hey, audience, if you're listening, just understand that when you buy a Clavinova or a keyboard, just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's the best. And this is going to be my argument for there are millions, trust me. I've got 5 I could give you right now, millions of spin-it pianos that are out there. And just take the time, get on Marketplace, get on Craigslist or wherever you do your neighborhood swap and shop, and look for a piano. Now, granted, you need to then look for a piano tuner, and then the piano tuner could come and say, I can't do this like where it needs to be, but I'll get it close. And I would say, spend the $100, get the free piano. There are gobs of people who want their spinets gone out of their homes. Get the piano, spend the $125 to have the piano brought into close to tune. All right. And then with that, but there's something about actual hammers on strings and sound waves moving that is different than music that is coming out of speakers. And with that, it actually affects the brain in its development based on what's going on. Interesting factoid.
Yeah.
So you've done some studies on that? Or have you seen some studies on that?
Well, really, I don't know if it was, once again, longtime listener to NPR. I think that there was something on music on NPR, and they were just being informative about it all, and saying how that study, or that gentleman even said, he's like, when children start piano lessons, 7 out of 10 will stick with it longer if it's a real piano. Where the follow-through with a Clavinova style, electric style through earphones or, just whatever. If you don't want to hear the child practicing Mary Had a Little Lamb for,
plug in the headphones on it.
Yeah, you plug in the headphones and it's good to go, and stuff like that. But what what they say is it's the motion and movement of that sound wave that it hits the body, it influences, now go to, like, why do you like live concerts? Because you can feel the music, And Cam, you mentioned before with the Native band that brought a visceral, physical, emotional pull out of you into that. You said playing that music with that group brought something out of you that no other music does. So, in a cut daisies and unicorns feel, since since you are an avid follower of the group, I would say, how interesting is it that the unseen influences the physical, and we can chase that down a rabbit hole.
I think a lot of our conversations over the past however many years has been around that very topic of how the unseen affects the physical, in parentheses, spiritual as well.
Yeah.
Especially you talk about, time and we've talked about time bending and all of that good stuff and time travel before. So I get a kick out of hearing you talk about that on the podcast, because I've heard so many back porch conversations about it. Yeah, it's crazy. There's something when you're talking about kids playing piano too, there's something about that, especially if you start really young. I never did take piano lessons, but I was always plunking around on the piano. And there's something about when you're really young, that tactile experience, because you're, kind of all of your senses are firing on all cylinders as they're developing. And there's so much that comes from playing a real instrument. There's a kind of sense of autonomy too that comes with that is really important, I think, for kids to develop confidence in all areas of life. Is that comes out of kind of, you are in control of what comes out of that instrument, and it's all in your hands, kind of like, and it comes from your heart and your mind and your experience, what comes out of it, and then you can hear it and everyone else can hear it. And especially when that's, as a kid, when you get that positive feedback from your parents or friends or family or whoever it is, praising the music you make as a kid, that feels really good, because that kind of gives you autonomy as a child to say, okay, so I can create, this is good, I can feel it, so I know it's real, they're hearing it, so they know it's real. And that kind of helps, I think, that can really shape worldview. Now that I might be overextending there a little bit, but that's how it worked for me, at least.
Well, but I think you should continue that thought and take that thought further into how it shaped you and how that shaped your worldview. Because in that, what we're doing is we're pushing boundaries. We're taking people who have thought within a box, and we're saying, hey, consider this. Consider going outside of the box that's been sold to you, or the box that, based on your experience, has allowed for you to find a comfortable place to be in, and let's push through that. So talk to us about it. Tell us what you found that true, and then let's take the walk over your bridge into how it's influenced your worldview.
Well, I think when it comes to playing instruments, even so I'm, like I said, not a piano player by any means, but I do love to play on pianos. It certainly, for me, feels like play. I never take it too seriously, but I can plunk out chords and melodies and all that kind of stuff and kind of hang out in that space. But doing that, especially, there's been a lot of days at Gloria Day where I would hang out and play on that big, beautiful, grand piano in the sanctuary.
Yeah, yeah.
There's nobody there and all the lights are off.
Yeah, you love that, man.
That's my favorite thing. And it didn't even matter. I could be just playing C, G, and F over and over, and I'd just be the happiest kid in the world. And that's at 22, and that there's something about hearing something that beautiful take up so much space. Because I think that's what's crazy about it to me, is that those notes that you're playing in there, you can hear obviously in a small room, but even in a room that size, it carries through the whole room and it carries down the hall. And I think that's what's really cool about it. That kind of, just the travel that music has, the way, whether it's the actual sound of it, and then kind of combining that with the reach of playing music for people, and how you can travel through experiences or go places, mentally or spiritually while music is being played. I think all of that kind of wrapped up has had a pretty profound impact on me.
Yeah.
The fact that you can sit down and push buttons, essentially, or hit hammers or pull on, for me as a drummer, especially, I can take these sticks literal just sticks of wood and just beat them against some wood and metal, and a plastic composite, and it makes something that really can like make someone want to move, or make someone want to, sit on a porch and have a sweet tea. I don't know, whatever you're whatever you're jonesing for.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't wrapped my mind around it. And sometimes I think that I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it because I just enjoy what it is. And I enjoy not knowing what it is. Because the more I tried to wrap my head around it, the more I feel like I'm squeezing some of the mystery out of it, which is, I really love the mystery. I'm okay to be blind to what it is and how it works, and keep learning about how to perform it better as far as music goes. But I just like what it is, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
You know what I mean?
I was just thinking about the environment, because I don't think you know. So my parents tried to start me on piano when I was younger.
Oh, wow.
And what I found for me, like, it really, the important part is also the person who's, kind of the instructor.
Sure.
I kind of pictured my instructor. I mean, she was a little mean. And so that was also the reason why I'm like, I don't think I want to play piano anymore. So I think I played for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, Mom, I'm done. I don't want to play.
Yeah.
And so I hear, like, when you're talking, like, there is something about the sound, and I love music.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a heart, thing for me, and goes back to my, speaks to a lot, of, I love it.
Yeah.
But there was something that happened in the playing of it, and then, like, I didn't necessarily like my instructor.
Yeah.
So
I will say one thing. My parents, when you're talking about environment, my parents did such a great job of creating a musical environment. And looking back on it now, it seems like they may have done it intentionally, but at the time we didn't really process that they were maybe doing this. But they always let us play music whenever there was no, like, stop playing an instrument. If you were playing an instrument and you still had, like, schoolwork to do, it's like, that's fine. At least he's playing an instrument kind of thing. Whereas if I was to go play a video game while I still had work to do, different story. But I have a lot of very specific memories attached to music, and that combine a lot of the senses, where it's our living room and our home growing up, because we had a small house and there was 6 people living in there. We had a small house, but in the front living room, the windows were always open in the summer and spring, and there was lilac bushes underneath the front windows.
Oh, wow.
And these 2 big trees in the front yard, so you had sunlight, but there was also some nice shade. Well, that was the biggest thing, is the awesome natural light in that room. We always had the lights off during the day and the windows open, and the breeze would kind of blow the that fresh lilac into the living room where the piano was. And then there was always kind of everyone in the house kind of quietly doing their own thing. And then one person is either playing an instrument, or we've got music going as we're all kind of reading or working quietly or whatever it is, And I think that, to me, was so formative, in the way that just kind of laid back, very, I don't know, just very enjoyable. I don't have a better word for it, but I mean, if you can picture yourself in that space, that just sounds great, doesn't it? I mean, laying back on a couch.
Sensory too. I mean, you're talking about lilac, you're talking about sight. There's shade. I mean, like, all of that's great.
Yeah. So there's so much of that has played into why I like what I like about music now. And even now, as I sit in this house, my desk with my keyboard, and I've got guitars and amps and drums and all this stuff here. I'm parked in my bay window of the house, 3 big windows in front of me. And there's when I'm not recording, the windows are open and the breeze is good. So I've tried as hard as I can to recreate that. So when I sit down to make music now, I don't have lilacs, which really bums me out, because that's a really favorite thing of mine. But I'm just kind of trying to recreate that kind of same space that I had as a kid, And it really does bring a lot of things back. And I think when you talk about playing music, the ability to recall is really cool, like experiences and even, riffs or songs, specific songs. I'll sit down and, maybe if the environment's just right, I'll remember a song that I listened to as a kid that I want to learn or something like that.
Sure.
It's been really neat.
Yeah.
But I think especially my whole point on this tangent is that full sensory dive into music for kids can be so powerful. But when you have a kid that just, they maybe learn on a headphones and a little Casio, they're going to have a harder time. And I would say probably most times, not all the time, but they will have a harder time kind of engaging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if you have a kid who's got like ADD or anything like that. They need that full sensory dive.
Yeah. I think another interesting tidbit on music that I've picked up along the way, and I believe it was Dave Grohl, may have said that, it's an amazing thing that when you play music and you send music out, and this isn't a universal spiritualism quote, it's the point of time and space. He's like, when you start those sound waves, they go out to the universe and they continue to go throughout the universe forever. And so I found it really interesting, Cam, as you were telling the story, that, one of the things that you're drawn into is that as you have a physical response to creating music, then you also travel with the music internally, going through, as you mentioned, as you're playing on that Yamaha C9, in the middle of this sanctuary that has 70-foot ceilings and the notes are ringing out, and the simplicity of a chord for our listeners would be that, 3 notes make up a major or a minor chord. It's the fullness of those 3 notes. And in that, so you literally, out of 4 or 3 different chords, and whether it's 9 notes or because the notes actually cross over into each other, if it's 7 notes, how that music is traveling and it goes out, even once it's past, and I'm doing this on purpose, once it's past our physical sense of hearing, doesn't mean that the music has stopped moving, because what is music? Music is sound wave. Can you see sound waves? No. You have to be able to have the right auditory...
Unless you have synesthesia.
Oh, which actually, a common friend of ours, his daughter, Chloe, has it.
Huh. Crazy. Oh, that'd be interesting to talk to her.
Yeah. Man, that's like a $12 word right there. But for those of you, just to save you the clicking and Googling and trying to figure out how to spell that word, basically what that is the ability that you see color assigned to musical notes, right?
Sound, yeah.
Or sounds. Yeah.
Sound, yeah. Voices can have certain colors, and certain notes and chords can have certain colors.
Yeah, she even had, Jeff had told me, she even had the numerically and through the English alphabet, there was a color assigned to each. And so when letters were put together, not only would she read the words, she would read through the colors.
Wow.
In the assignment of knowing as she was reading what she was reading. And there were different books that she was drawn to read, and then there were other things that she wasn't. And she just told her dad, she goes like, it's not pleasant to look at.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And so, as we consider that, I do pose to the audience and say, hey, here's another, I would say, concrete example of how the unseen influences our lives in a daily, hour by hour, moment by moment, in the auxiliary of our physical living out. It's the unseen that can have influence on us. And this is a beautiful way to be able to do that. Now I can drop down another path, but I'll choose not to because it's really going to derail us, and that is the evils of rock and roll and a right-wing conservative upbringing of that. Also, Kevin, when and if you listen to your son being interviewed on this podcast, I will say kudos to you and your wife in the support that you've given to your children, not only in music, but there was never a show that I was at where you, your brother, your sister-in-law were singing, playing, interacting, performing, whatever, that they weren't there. And so even through a beautiful picture of parenting, and as children become adults, even with differing views of worldview, there's still that great love that they have and support their children in that. And so, I mean, obviously I haven't lived with your family, in your family, or known your family. Family's family. There's always, undertow and there's waves, there's valleys, there's mountains and all that. But, again, for people who are looking to parent, how do we parent well? Creating memories. I think that your mom probably unintentionally, subconsciously, she emulated something that was such a great heart and love for her that she enjoyed. She wanted to pass that along. And so it was something that she gave, not only the parenting from the educational standpoint, but that she wanted to surround you with something that she cared so deeply about. And she knew that music would teach you something that a school book wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. They were very and continue to be very, very big supporters of us musically. Yeah, it's a crazy thing. Not a lot of parents can handle having a middle school, high school age drummer in the house who's very into punk rock and heavy music, and all you hear from the basement is just the punk and rock drums. But in my headphones, I'm hearing everything, but all they hear is just the banging and the crashing. Also, if you see my laptop screen moving, I'm trying to get my cat off my desk. But he's not having it. He's really determined to play with this laptop screen. But yeah, I think as a parents interested, because I've had a lot of parents ask me about I want to give my kid music lessons, I want to give them drum lessons or piano lessons, or how do I get them involved? And a lot of times they're very focused on buying an instrument first and then getting them like a private teacher. I think a good way to start off is just to, without enrolling them, just give them toy versions of instruments at a young age and see how they interact and if they like it. And then maybe if they express interest, throw them into a lesson, but I think creating experiences is important.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times they focus on well, we bought you a guitar, but you never learned, or you didn't like your lessons, so we quit and stuff. But it's I think give them a whole experience. If you buy your kid a guitar, then show them some videos of some awesome guitar players and keep them hyped up a little bit.
Yeah.
Show them Slash or whoever, Santana, John Mayer, whoever you're into. I don't know, but I think what I was talking about was how when I was trying to quit band and tell my parents I didn't want to do it anymore. My dad would just show me videos of Neil Peart.
Okay.
And bring me home magazines, drummer magazines, because he had a drummer that he worked with that would bring his old magazines in to share with me. And he would just show me all of he'd give me the magazines and show me the articles about different drummers. And he would then we'd watch YouTube videos, which at the time YouTube was still pretty young. And we didn't even have Wi-Fi. So we were stealing a neighbor that actually had Wi-Fi's Wi-Fi. And he was pulling them up on the laptop or on a BlackBerry, being you got to see this, you got to know how cool this is. And that was a big part of what kept me in it. Which is funny, as funny as it is, my dad being not a musician in the family, out of the six of us, 7 if you include Stephanie as an in-law, who's also very musical. Dad's the one that doesn't necessarily play an instrument, but he was the one that kept me doing music because of his love for it just as a listener. So I think I've even in the last couple of years gravitated more towards that part of myself where I really enjoy it so much as a listener that that's what I search for when I play music now. Is I want to play music that I like to listen to. And if I don't want to listen to it, or I'm not going to enjoy listening to my bandmates from the drummer's seat, I just don't play that music anymore. Whereas before I just took gigs to get gigs. I was like, is it fun to drum to? Cool. Like, is it fun? Like, are the parts fun? But now it's like, I don't want to play super loud anymore.
Yeah.
That part of me is dead. And I think it's because my ears are going far too young.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you're 22. You're 22 years old, and you're talking about your ears getting dead.
Yeah, I'll be 23 in July, and I've played a lot of rock shows. I say a lot, but for me, it feels like a lot. I guess it depends on your perspective of how many shows is a lot of shows, but and played a lot of like punk underground house basement shows in a concrete basement with a punk band where everything's set to 11 and everyone's screaming and moshing, and it's just like there's no way that you walk out of that with the same level of hearing you walked into, no matter what your age is. Like that doesn't bounce back.
Right.
So those days are done. I'd rather sit back with some brushes and really groove on something and let a songwriter or an instrumentalist really take a melody or a solo or whatever it is and really tie it all together. That's where I found a lot of my joy. Is doing that. So I was curious, as we're kind of talking about this, if either of you have experiences with music that have influenced your daily life, like not necessarily like a musical instrument or a musical experience that influenced you artistically or as a musician or anything like that, but like something that was, whether it was a concert or an album or a song that really affected your everyday life.
That's a great question.
Yeah, and you know what, Cam, this is why we were talking about bringing you on as a frequent guest,
right,
or a trifold co-moderator. Just because that's a great question, and I'm basically filling space so Phil can think of a thing.
Yeah, so here's, so I thought of something immediately. I don't know why this one popped into my head, but Hurt by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
And then was covered by Johnny Cash.
Produced by?
Well, the producer for Johnny Cash was Rick Rubin.
Yeah, the backing band was?
I don't know.
Tom Petty.
Oh, you're right.
Was it really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And Rick Rubin, huh? I didn't know that.
So he did the Johnny Cash. He was the one that brought Johnny Cash out of that. And he said, we should do this. And Johnny's like, I don't know about that. Like, and then he even brought like Hurt to him, and he was like, yeah, no. But then there was that connection, and I loved to hearing the story of how when Johnny Cash said, "Oh yeah, I want to do this song," and he went to
Nine Inch,
Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, and he's like, hey, "I want to do your song," and of course, like Trent Reznor, like, yeah, like do it,
yeah.
Yeah.
But then he said, like, Trent, when he heard Johnny Cash doing his song, he's like, it's kind of like somebody's messing with my girlfriend, though. Like, that's my that's my thing.
Right.
I mean, and I think there was a song Explorer on Netflix where he's talking about, in particular, this song Hurt, and it comes from, like, when you're understanding, like the lyrics, and I mean, it comes from a place, like there's some hurt, there's some woundedness.
Yeah.
And I always, I always connected summary when I listened to that song, like, and my wife's like, she's like, I don't like this song. And I'm like, why don't you like this song? She's like, because it makes me sad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that's the reason why I like it. Going
Right.
back to my understand, like feelings. I haven't always, I'm suppressed feelings or whatever, but
Yeah.
like I like music that makes me feel something.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think that was one that when I heard it, in high school, I was like, this, it's connecting me to something. And I didn't understand what it was trying to connect me to. But even listening to it, I mean, every time it come across, I hear it on whether the radio or whatever, I'm like, I'm always going to keep it there because like it does make me feel something. Now, it doesn't mean it makes me feel exactly what Trent Reznor's talking about with,
Sure.
the needle pierces a
sure.
hole. I've never shot up anything.
Yeah.
But what it does is like there's that level of like, here's my life. Like there's a level of hurt there.
Yeah.
And like, like I connect with some of the emotion and it makes me want to feel.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's what came to mind first when you mentioned that. So,
And I think for
That's cool.
our audience, we could come back to a place to be able to say, it may make Heather feel sad. It makes you feel, and I'm going to put a blank line, it makes you feel something, at least you feel.
right.
And with a detachment from feeling, here is I'm going to use the word portal for you to be able to travel in your humanity to a place that some other people may think, I feel all the time. But it gives you a portal to go to a place to feel.
Right.
And, that in this moment it may be sadness or you really didn't describe how it made you feel, more so that you just connected because you do feel.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
I think that's huge. I think especially those old. I've noticed that I don't really know anybody who hates old country singers, no matter what music that they listen to. I think everyone has a soft spot for like the Johnny Cashes and Willie Nelsons of the world. But the sadder stuff that they do, I feel like that has created a vessel for so many people, or portal, as I think is the word you use, Steve, for so many people who feel suppressed in their emotions to travel those roads. And a lot of those guys are singing about really hard stuff. Like you talked about Trent Reznor writing about, shooting up and stuff like that. And while that may not be relatable for everybody, that this just setting the stage emotionally, I think that's really cool, because that does, for me, I'm kind of the same way. I have a lot of suppressed emotions, and that Midwest evangelical stoicism is deep in me. And so when I hear music like that, I can relate to that feeling of like, this opens the door for me to feel, even if I don't relate to the lyrics. Yeah, that's really neat.
I think the thing, and we shared in our last podcast about music, I have selective listening space. Like I'm using my commute. It's a 25-minute one-way commute, and I use that to listen to the radio. And there's a channel in Chicago that plays some old stuff, or just a variety of different things. And so what I find currently, Cam, how music is influencing me is my ability to listen. And I've been refining my listening. And so I'm collecting. I was thinking about it this morning as I was driving in. I'm like, man, I really dig the sound of that guitar. And so then I started working through, and it's just keeping the musical part in me alive, because I played my guitar maybe, it was once for the first 7 months, and then when Holy Week came along, I practiced for 2 days for 2 services and things like that. So my hands-on music has been off while I've been going through the construction portion of the Earthen Warehouse studio. And that being said, I like have this thing. Now, the good news is I've been running for a couple years not writing songs. And so I'm like, well, is this writer's block? Am I being an asshole? Or like, what's the deal? And see, I ruined the episode just like that, for kids, you know, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm going to just take it as it goes. And I read Brandy Carlisle's Broken Horses and was just so inspired in that. Now I've got 3 songs, at least words. And here's my tension. I'm not sure if I'm a musician and a songwriter as much as I am a philosopher and a poet. And yet, as I've heard other songwriters talk about it, actually Jeff Tweedy, in his Write One Songbook, you know, people have asked, you know, like, well, are you a poet or are you a songwriter? And he's like, the answer is yes. It's like, it takes both. And so like I'm writing, I've got 3 songs. I'm going to write another one today. I already have it planned, you know? Yeah, I've got time on my hands to be able to do that. So I'm going to sit quiet with a notebook and let, and this will be spiritualism. Let the universe speak to me about the things that are within me that need to get out to others. And that's the request, because there's things in me that people don't need to know. It's called a gate. Right. There's things in me that shouldn't be passed on to others. It's better left unsaid, you know? So go ahead.
I think Jason Isbell talks about, in his conversation about songwriting, Isbell talks about he never wanted to be a writer. He just wanted to write, and it comes down to like sitting down and saying, I'm going to write a song versus saying this needs to be written. And I think you can hear that in his music, where it's like, it really sounds, especially if you go back to Southeastern, that album, like that, you can feel and you can hear that needed to be written. Right. Those experiences, those stories had to be written. And I think that's what makes that record so good. And I think that's what makes his music so good, is because you get that feeling from him. Like, he has to get these words out. He has to get these experiences out, versus maybe a professional songwriter who's studied songwriting and knows all the formulas and has read every book, has gone to school, all that stuff, and can like knock out a pop hit, you know, no problem, or can sit in a studio and write a song in 30 minutes that wins a Grammy next year. Like, I think that those are kind of the 2 like major differences in styles of songwriting. And as you're talking about that, I think the poetry can go either way. It can be poetry for the sake of poetry, or poetry that expresses your point of view. But I've always connected to, and I think the commonality between you and I being the music that we share a lot of the same music that we enjoy. And a lot of the music that I think that we listen to feels like songs that had to be written. Yeah. And as these, you know, moody artist types, you know, who we can really dwell on things, whether it's good or bad. I think that is where I feel drawn, is like, I can't just write a song. They come out of moments of like, this has to be written down right now for me. And then I sometimes don't even care if I record it or not. It's just, it had to be written down. Yeah.
So on the way home last week, I heard Crackers, What the World Needs Now. And there's a line in that song, what the world needs now, or something like, I need another folk singer, like I need a hole in my head. Yeah. So anyway, for the Cracker purists, you already know what the lyric is, and so sorry I slaughtered that up. But hey, Cam, where I'd like to go down the road, and we can do this in combination of a couple different highlights in this past year. I mean, we've all been like living through the pandemic, so we can use that, but we can also go back to and in the midst of it, I know that the death of George Floyd really impacted you a lot, from your internal into action. And I'd kind of like to give you a little bit of a platform in things that you are involved in outside of working a job to be able to pay bills, buy food, stay alive, love the love of your life, and then to be able to have you know, the money to be able to produce the music and be involved in music the way I personally am getting on a bandwagon that I am trying to figure out how do we create the financial stability for a arts renaissance where art is valued at the level that it should be valued versus the diminished literally pennies on the hundreds of thousands of listens and things like that. So but I know that this past year has been formative, if not even reformational in your life, and it's shaping your life. And so I'm just going to toss that out there. And for those, I think our listeners would love to hear the changes and how this past year has impacted you and what it's launched you into.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two sides to the change. There's the change that happened within George Floyd's murder and the protests that ensued, and then there's the change that happened because of the pandemic. I almost feel like those, even though they were happening at the same time, it feels like two completely separate parts of the year. It almost feels like we lived through 2 or 3 years all at once, because there was an election and everything too going on, right? So there was so much happening last year. I can't even pull it. I don't even know which thread to pull at. But I would say, on the topic of George Floyd and his murder and how all that went down, we had a lot of protests in Des Moines last year, and I think going into that, the first protest, which was in remembrance of George Floyd, and I went because it felt like the right thing to do. I had no previous history of protesting. I had done very little work on addressing my own privilege. I had done very little work on addressing patriarchal views and systems and systems of white supremacy and white privilege. And you asked, so I'll up front, I'll be candid about some of my beliefs on that, and I'll try to keep my language at bay because I can get kind of worked up. But you asked, so so I think that first protest was really great because it was one of the first moments where I was able to really shut myself down, shut off my own thoughts, shut off my own narrative on what I thought was happening in the world, or what I saw, or what my experience was, and I just listened. And there was a lot of speakers that night, and people of color. And we talked about music, right, and how being at a live concert and you feel the waves and everything, and how that all travels. It's the same thing with voices, and it's the same thing with emotion that's conveyed. And so when you stand in person at a protest or at a vigil or anything like that, and there's speakers and that their voices are amplified, it's just the same thing. And rather than chords carrying a message, it's emotions and its tone and its body language carrying these messages. And when you can soak that in like you would music, where my narrative is off, I'm just hearing your experience. That was a life-changing moment, because it really it broke me down into a way where I realized that within myself, I had always considered myself someone who helps other people, someone who cares deeply about everyone. I had used the lines, "I don't see color," before. I'd been down the road in years before that of like, there's no, like, an internal monologue of, there's no way I could ever have any parts of racism or internal bias or anything like that, because I'm friends with people of color, a lot of those conversations. And being in that moment, I realized, well, if all of those things are true about me, then what are you going to do about it? You know, this is a moment where you have people standing in front of you, screaming, begging for help, saying, this is happening. It can't be, it's not being taken care of. There's no justice for those that are being murdered. There's, you know, all of this. There's no protection. I'll have to pick which lanes I go down because it all ties in. There's so many factors that tie into institutional racism. But so that, to fast forward a little bit, the first protest that Steve and I attended together, I had been out at a couple, and you were like, hey, I'm thinking I'm going to come out to this and check it out. And there were some other leaders of faith in the community that had been coming out and supporting, and these peaceful protests. And that first night, Steve, we were at, where were we at? East High School. Do you remember?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So that's when there was a tent of people that had brought food and drinks, and people were doing donations and such. I just went over and asked if they needed help, and I ended up doing that all night. And at the end of the night, the girl that was in charge of that gave me her information, and I was like, hey, I can help out tomorrow. Because at that point we were protesting like 5-6 days a week. I mean, It was like every single day. And I was like, well, it's COVID. I work from home. There's nothing going on. Like, I can definitely help out, and this feels right. So I jumped in, and the girl that I was helping, her name was Zakaria Hill. And so we were doing sandwiches and water bottles and snacks and all that, and taking donations from the community and giving it out at protests, just making sure everyone was fed, everyone was hydrated. Because, it was the summer. So it's Iowa summers. It gets hot, and you're out there for a few hours standing in the sun. You need to be protected and need to be nourished. So that was kind of our bag. And then we started getting a lot of money donated to us. Like more money than we could ever spend on ham sandwiches and peanut butter and jellies. So we started, and we got a lot of support, and it's like, well, what do we do now? It's like, well, let's give this a name. Let's make this a nonprofit. We'll go and get our 501(c)(3). And so that's what we did. And there's the Aaliyah Quinn, who is the co-founder. Her and Zakaria was kind of, they started it up at that first protest doing sandwiches and stuff. And then I jumped in, and the three of us, we made it a nonprofit. And fast forward a year, to kind of long story short, we have gone from just doing event support, anytime there's a protest or, anything like that, or a vigil where they're providing food typically. But we've raised thousands and thousands of dollars. We've done awesome programs for the community. We've done all kinds of like yard sales where there's like free clothes and stuff. We do it's now an annual event. We do a celebration of Black motherhood centered around Black mothers, where there's free baby supplies and maternity supplies, and there's food, and there's a raffle for some larger items like strollers or cribs and stuff like that. We do online programming. We bring on, especially try to center it around people of color who have, like, there's a lady that we brought in recently named Shannon Sellers. She does a financial advisory company. I don't even know. We do all kinds of stuff.
There's a grant program too.
Yep, we have a grant program to support activists, young activists of color under the age of 25, from high school to 25, that do work in the community. And we were able to award 10 grants of $700 to each of those individuals this year.
Community garden.
Community garden, that's pretty cool. We have a community community pantry that has, like, it's in our garden. It's this big fixture that we just put up last weekend, that has like clothes, food, feminine products, all kinds of stuff in it. We've got, I don't know, man, we do so much stuff. So it's a really great team of people.
What's the name of the organization? How can people check you out?
I should probably say what it's called. Yeah, it's the Supply Hive. On Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, all of that. It's just the Supply Hive. Um, it's a neat org. Like we'll turn a year old in June, so we're coming up on a year being an organization. We're legit. We're 501(c), all that good stuff, and kind of the whole mission is we're 100% crowdfunded. Currently, we don't have any grants that we're receiving. We've gotten a couple of smaller ones here and there for specific things, I guess. But basically what we do is we just gather supplies and money from the community and redistribute it to people who need it. We're a true nonprofit. None of us make a dime.
I was going to say, that's one really big thing of this group is no one's pulling any money. It's like 100% of every dollar goes and is invested into community, correct?
Absolutely. And we're pretty transparent about that. We posted our report for 2020. We posted online. We tell everyone exact dollar amounts and here's where we spent it. Because we've gotten, last year, I think we took in like 50, 60 grand in like 6 months. And that was just from people in Des Moines Venmoing us essentially, or Cash App or whatever, PayPal, all that stuff, or cash donations. That's a lot of money, and being stewards of that money, it's like we see a lot of nonprofits where there's it's up for debate where the money goes.
Sure.
There's people running nonprofits that make ridiculous amounts of money, and then the problems that they're so committed to fighting still exist pretty heavily. So in our mission of transparency, we just show you where the money goes. If someone ever is like, hey, I want to see like how much money you guys have, and I want to see which, if anyone ever was to ever present that kind of question or line of questioning, it's just there. We have some great volunteers. There's 6 of us on the board. I'm lucky enough to work with 5 amazing women. Monica Ovcharsky is on our board of directors. She's our treasurer. She runs Sweet Tooth Farms in Des Moines, which is a urban farm. She does a lot of amazing produce there. She bakes bread. She recently started a new farmers market in Des Moines with another person who I forget her co-founder's name, but that's called Heart of Des Moines Market. Kenna Marple, another amazing woman who she serves as our secretary. She's a really neat lady. She's done a lot of work like this in the past. And then Zakaria, who's our president, co-founder, who I mentioned before, and Aaliyah, who's also she's our co-founder and vice president. Both just graduated college this year. Zakaria from ISU and Aaliyah from Drake, and then Amani Dubois, who she graduated. She went to school at, I'm going to forget now. I want to say she was in Texas for a while, and then I think maybe Iowa State, but she's a teacher as well. But yeah, so it's a really great group of ladies. I feel lucky to work with everybody, and yeah, it's been an experience. It's been like, I think softening the heart and opening the ears, I think has been my biggest thing. It's just the more I listen and the more I shut off what I think, what my opinions on matters of race are, what my opinions on matters of social justice are, the more I shut that off and allow people who are marginalized to speak into that space in my heart, that has made discussions around race and around social justice so much easier, because I'm not trying to develop anything, I'm not trying to formulate my own opinion on anything, because it just doesn't matter. My opinion just doesn't matter as a white dude I'm not affected by it at all. Yeah. If anything, I benefit from it. Now, that's not to say that there's not parts of patriarchal systems that have a negative effect on me as a white dude, but when it comes to, racial injustice, I'm not affected by it. And so my opinion on it, frankly, just doesn't matter. It's more important that I listen to people who are affected by it and help. And I think that's all you can really, what we should all really kind of be striving for is shutting down like, well, I think this happened, or clearly if you watch the video, it's like, this is where I have to censor my language, but just shut up, man. Like, you know, it doesn't matter what you think happened. Somebody died, and his family and his community is hurting.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only thing that matters right now. And how do we fix that?
Well, and Cam, I really appreciate you taking the time to be able to share, and ultimately that's the string that I was hoping you're going to pull on. But I wanna pass the baton to Phil to be able to share with our listeners, because there are some people who, in listening to this interview, have already turned this off because of the topic. All right?
Sure.
We recognize that.
Okay.
There are other people who are like, oh, hold it. There's an independent voice that's not Phil and Steve bringing this to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if I had $1 for every time I mentioned, hey, we're two privileged white dudes doing a podcast. I mean, like, we're the most not cool thing going on right now. I mean,
I remember you guys talked about that in the beginning,
Right.
You know, about kicking around the idea of, do we even start this right now? You know,
right.
I appreciated that you guys were, you know, navigating in that space and having that conversation, because that's a huge point, is even to say, you like to recognize, like, is it to even give it space to, like, maybe I should consider, is it the right time, and stuff like that. That's a huge thing.
Well, and even when you ask the question about, hey, are you guys in a new space? I mean, like, there's everything around this whole project that flies in the face of, there are other people with greater need than us needing to do this and put, you know, the financial investment, the time investment in all of this. Except that Phil and I, we've walked through this and talked through this quite a bit together. Right. And that is, we're not going to change all the minds immediately. You know, we're not going to have a bunch of followers immediately. What if we can be a voice, and if we go back to the music, that when you speak something, that it's going out and that is traveling, again, not spiritual connotation to the universe, but in a universe, and we know that these sound waves are making a difference in the spaces, not only that we sit in, but also the spaces of where people are hearing and listening. So, you know, I bring all of that up because we are actively in motion here in Chicagoland. But I want Phil to share a story he was sharing with me this morning about something that's occurring and is a occurrence right now. And we're just putting this story out here, not to say anything about all of these stories, but just to say, hey, folks, pay attention to what's going on in your current local surrounding. This is not just it happens in the South with those white people. So, Phil, why don't you share? There's a gentleman, Walter, that kind of swung through Tabor, did a tour, and gentleman of Hispanic descent. Mm-hmm. And why don't you just take that story and tell the story about this church plant that was trying to start, but why people couldn't come to town?
Yeah, it's a to me just another layer, right? So he's Guatemalan, and he was in a suburb of Chicago, so it was a little bit further out, about an hour out of Chicago, hour 15, and they were trying to be able to start something. And they built up a number of families, but they were also having a hard time renting that storefront. So they moved into the next town where the place where it was trying to launch them came from. And so they said, "Hey, families, it's just right over in the next town. It'll take you, maybe 5 minutes more to get there." But as these families were traveling from the one city into the next one, they were being pulled over by the police. Because this community is, I think they said, somewhere like in the 90 percentile white. And so they knew that whoever was going to be driving in that wasn't, like, they should let them know. So they were saying that there was a large account where people were driving in and being pulled over by the police, and the police telling them, yeah, we know you don't belong here. I don't, like, how messed up is this?
Yeah.
That there can be a city that's saying you don't belong here.
Well,
Yeah.
and I would just appeal to the group of people that would be for gospel and want to preach the gospel, and what is big and heavy on their heart is they're all worried about people going to hell and eternal damnation, and would want to be able to preach the gospel. And they're like, why are we talking about race? This doesn't even affect us. This is not what this is about. Here are all these people need to hear about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they need to get saved so that they can go to heaven and not be in hell. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe what we're in the middle of right now is a living out of what eternity already is. And just ask the question, what are you going to do about this? Would you get on the side of that there's got to be a mental and a mindset shift on how people are thinking in regards to, we have police forces profiling as people are driving into town and saying to a group of people, you don't belong here, get out. And if they said, but we're going to church, and so when are evangelicals gonna wake up to the reality of this? Mm-hmm. And so the empirical capitalistic mindset of safety and wealth, it just irritates the hell out of me. And so, hey, if I pissed a bunch of people off and you don't want to listen, that's fine, because what you're dealing right now is, Cam, I'm worked up.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think a lot of people forget too that, and it does ruffle feathers sometimes, which kind of cracks me up, because it's just fact that Jesus was brown. He had brown skin.
Right.
I was raised with pictures of Jesus as a white guy for sure.
With blue
that is
eyes.
just geographic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with geographically not possible.
Right.
Thing. So there's I just like to start that nugget with people who come from a background of, faith, but haven't begun to address, like, that maybe Jesus's message was everything that peaceful protest is about. Jesus was this great example of that. And Richard Rohr talks about who are we to know? It's in relation to prayer, but this conversation makes me think of it like, who are we to know what to pray for? And that's what I think of when I think about this. It's like, literally, who the hell are you to say, God, I want this to happen, or God is telling me that this is what His plan is. Especially when you're praying around things like that. But really what we should be asking for is for God to make clear these paths, and for the experiences to come that He needs, and just to, not asking so specifically, and I think when you talk about this kind of stuff, it's like, who are we to say that, that God wants certain people to go to hell, or to be driven out of town, or anything like that? Where are you getting that message? Because that's certainly not in the Bible that I grew up studying. And while there's tons of different scriptures and translations, I feel like I have a firm understanding of good, chunks of the scripture.
Sure.
From years of reading it. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think there were some leaders of faith that I talked to throughout protest, and their whole thing was like, this feels like exactly what Jesus would want for anybody. And this feels like, when you talk about, when you enter the conversation of Black Lives Matter, and it's countered with all lives matter, right? Well, if that was true, and you could argue that, it is true, but the context is incorrect. a lot of people of faith will use all lives matter as a blanket statement to discount the protests, you know, like they feel like they're being left out of it almost. But the whole situation there is all lives can't really truly matter until Black lives matter. And it's like, no one's saying that, white guys, no one's saying that you don't matter. We're saying that right now there's people that are hurting. And I think the message of Jesus perfectly follows that conversation of like, there's people that are hurting right now, and I'm not ignoring you. I'm saying there's a problem, and we can put you on hold for just a quick second, and we need to take care of this because there's people that are hurting. And I think when you look at it like that, and that's what, you know, Black Lives Matter is about, it's like there's something happening, there's people hurting. And I think that truly follows the message of Jesus, who, especially being a brown man, you know, Black, he had dark skin. Yeah, that just makes sense to me. But I get a lot of pushback on that one, so I apologize for the listeners that are dropping off if that's happening, but
well, it's all right.
No apologies needed here.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah,
no apologies.
Absolutely no apologies needed. No. Well, I'm interested in. I asked a really weird question, Cam, and I wasn't really knowing what the answer could even be, but I thought that if you had a little time to reflect on it, are there things that you're passionate about that surprise you? Like when you look at yourself in the mirror, or like you're going through your daily life and you're like, oh my word, this invigorates me. I'm stoked about this. And I never would have guessed that for myself. Did you stumble on anything, or is that one of those, hey, Coble, I'm going to get back to you 6 months from now?
You know, I did think about that last night. You texted that to me, and at first I was trying to figure out what you meant by it, and I was like, man, there's a lot of ellipses in these texts, man. Coble's got all these dots. I wasn't sure what he meant by that, because it's funny that the generational gap on what ellipses means is really funny, because for like 22-year-olds, ellipses is like, there's like an attitude that goes with an ellipses, and it's funny because that's not where you're coming from at all.
No,
and it cracks me up. So I know what it is for Coble, and I know what it is for like someone who grew up texting in high school, and it's a totally different thing. So it's really funny because it's a lot of time, like if you're flirting or if you're being like, there's an attitude or something, you'll use a lot of ellipses. So that always cracks me up.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I would say that I haven't had any passions come up that have surprised me that I'm interested in them, because I had so much time to explore my interest as a kid, more than anybody else. I mean, being homeschooled, it was like, that's all I had time to do, is explore my interests. What I will say is that the avenues in which my passions manifest themselves and provide experience surprises me.
There you go.
I've always loved taking care of people. I've always loved being a community service, but like the Supply Hive coming out of nowhere, that was a huge surprise. And that's why it worked so well for me, is because that passion existed already. In fact, in a meeting with my board, we were talking about kind of our origin stories to each other. And I pulled up, we needed to do like a show and tell. And the thing that I brought for show and tell was a video of me from high school where I got interviewed for like the school paper or whatever. And they asked me what I wanted to do. I was a senior, and they asked me what I wanted to do after school. And I was like, well, I want to go and I want to work in nonprofits. And that's just what I want to do. And then here I am, I'm 5 years later, and it's like, well, that's what I'm doing. Right. I've always kind of known, but the Supply Hive is not necessarily the kind of nonprofit that I would have thought I would work for a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. I have done work with another nonprofit in town that made more sense for me, as a Art Force, Iowa, doing music lessons. And that's in that video as a high schooler. I was like, I want to teach music through a nonprofit. So that's really cool. So I've always kind of known those things. I've always been interested in music. I've always been interested in art, in pontificating. I think maybe the weirdest one that came out of the pandemic, I don't want to say it surprised me, but it was definitely the strangest one. I deeply enjoy puppets. which I think is a little strange, maybe a little surprising. I've always been a huge Muppets guy, and so I told my girlfriend, I was like, Sylvia, I think I want to get a puppet just to mess around with because we got so much time during this pandemic. And oh, dude, get off my laptop! Oh no, mother! Oh no, come on, man! You're too chunky for this. Ow! Oh my gosh, I just lost the whole thing. Okay, there we go. All right.
We didn't lose you, man. We got to see it all.
Right. All right, cool. He was clicking on stuff. And, but anyway, I told Sylvia, I was like, I think I want to get a puppet just to mess around with. And then I just kind of forgot about it. And she came over one day and had like bought me this awesome puppet from this like puppet maker in New York who makes these really professional puppets. And it's this weird little dude, but I've gotten a lot of joy out of like I just cracking myself up just hanging out with this like goofy looking Muppet style puppet. There's no real thing with that. There's no like internal like I get a whole lot of satisfaction like at a spiritual level or anything. It's just like I think it's funny.
Yeah.
Like to put a little puppet on and do weird, I don't know, skits and stuff, or like I'll like send my friends videos. Like if I'll like that's how I'll respond to text sometimes is I'll make like quick 5-second videos of the puppet responding to the text as opposed to like actually sending a text.
Oh my gosh.
Just weird stuff like that, you know?
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. So that's like, that one was kind of a surprise, but I think the avenues is what's changed. Never thought I'd be a country music guy growing up,
right?
But here I am, and that's what I love the most. So yeah, I think what surprises me is the way the universe presents opportunity. I keep thinking I've got it figured out, and no, I don't.
Yeah. Hey Cam, if people would you
get
be
thrown curveballs?
Would you be open if people wanted to follow you about your musical exploits? Could they follow you on Instagram? Would you prefer that, or would you like to name some bands and some things that they could check out? And if you're like,
sure.
no, don't follow my Instagram. I mean,
you can follow my Instagram. I don't really follow anybody back if you're worried about that.
Yeah.
I really, I follow like 40 people. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. I don't know what my username is. I think it's Cameron Eugene. That's my middle name. I have an account that will eventually have music on it that doesn't currently, that one is, I don't even know. I have to look. Cameron Eugene Music. You can see how much I post. There's no post on there, but that will eventually be where this project I'm working on ends up.
Yeah.
I would highly encourage following the Supply Hive and checking out there's a link tree on there to our website, some other like interviews and stuff if you want to learn more about that. The only band I'm playing in right now is Jake Schroet and the Residuals. So that one you can check out on Facebook. And Spotify. We got an album on Spotify and a single, and there should be some more singles coming up here shortly that we recorded last year at Sonic Factory. Yeah, it's a weird time. We didn't really, I had this whole thing going into the pandemic last year where I was like, I bet we're gonna make a bunch of music.
Yeah.
And we just didn't.
Yeah.
We tried, man. Yeah. We tried, but it was not happening.
Yeah.
There's music happening now. And you know what? I take that back. I recorded Jake Schroet. I recorded with him. He's a great Americana guy. We recorded 4 singles, I think. And my brother Justin and I, with our friend Colin and Chris Fordyce, recorded an album last summer that should come out sometime this year. And that'll be under, I don't know if Jay's named the band. He keeps changing stuff, but that'll be a cool one. Yeah, and then I've got some stuff, and Yeah.
Well, dude,
I don't know, man.
it has been a delight. And I know that, I mean, we could spend another 2 hours just talking about things that would interest us together and going down
Yeah.
this whole thing. Just to put a little tobacco in your pipe for you to think, I ordered a couple books, a couple Knights of the Templar books, actual historic, respected historians. So for people who have like been listening to me pontificate about all of the conspiracy that is going on, that research is compounding.
Going.
Yeah, and it's all flying back around with our brother and father Richard Rohr, and
Love that guy.
his mysterious approach to spirituality in the universe, and we move this in to be able to say, that's why I like time travel, because as a musician we bend it all the time, and we'll get into that conversation at a later date. But Cam, your voice is music to my ears, and I just really appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it's been good to talk, and yeah, we didn't even get to like new music, things you're listening to, not only creating, but
Yeah.
we didn't even get to that yet. So
Well,
Anytime.
we'll hold
I
that
would
up.
I'd love to drop two things on you before I
Okay.
go. I think as a follow up to this conversation and everything, as a resource for anyone that did stick around and is interested in learning more about unpacking issues of race, there's a really, really good book that I cannot recommend enough called So You Want to Talk About Race. Super short, easy read, easy to digest, breaks it down. I cannot pronounce the name of the author, and I don't want to butcher it. I want to say it's Ijeoma is her first name, and Oluo is her last name. But
Okay.
look that one up. And the album that I have been listening to a lot that is also related to this is Tyler Childers' new fiddle album. I think it's called A Long Dark History, which is also in reflection of the racist culture that he grew up in West Virginia.
Wow.
But it's an all instrumental fiddle record that is like just super, super good.
Wow.
So maybe we can put links to both of those.
There you go. Yeah.
Highly encourage it.
All right, cool. Well, you have a great rest of the day off, and I'm going to throw my big old arms around you and give you a universal hug. Yep. And I know that your band of brothers in the musical realm as well as in the electrical realm, you get great community, great community. And I just can't wait to see if you, Jordan, and Ben get together and electrocute yourselves, or at least
Oh, man.
do some kind of prompt that sends us into you traveling into the afterlife and coming back.
Or gridlock or something.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be electrifying.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It was great to finally put a face to all the stories, and great talking with you. And
Yeah, you too.
Steve-O,
Yeah.
good as always to see you. Give my love to Amy.
I will do it.
Hope you guys are enjoying Chicago.
Yes. And tell Sylvia I said hi.
Oh, we'll do that.
All right. Much love.
All right.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Take
All
care.
right. Take care. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We are going to wrap this up.
We are. So we'll do the thing that we always do. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, do all of that fun stuff that you that is really good for us to be able to help get the word out, get the message out. So
And what I would say is, if you've noticed in the background that we have a delightful bright picture, that is a fan art piece done by Lynn, or the artist formerly known as Caitlin. And so anyway, apparently with the studio being a broadscape, she is endeared to the idea that if you have a blank canvas, why not color on it? And so, you know what? That's an option. And maybe there's somebody out there, maybe there's an artist, maybe there's someone who likes to doodle, and they'd like to put together a Cut Daisies and Unicorns coloring book. or one of those when markers and pencils and filling in all the spaces with the bright colors and stuff like that. So we'll give you the option if you want to do that. You can do that.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
We put a shout out there for all of those who want to put out some fan art, or they can even take a topic that we've brought up and that it generates some kind of creative image in their head.
Oh,
we'll throw it up on the wall.
And there's images in my head I don't share, and there's images in my head that I'm free to share. And so anyway, hey, thanks a lot, everybody. We really appreciate you sticking around and taking this in. We'll look forward to the next episode. And as always, by the end of this episode, we have no idea what we're going to talk about next time. So,
you never know. We'll see.